cloud. Thanks everybody again for joining us for the Knowledge Network with Amy Choi, sponsored by the State of Women. I'm going to introduce Amy, our wonderful speaker here, who's spotlight for everybody. Amy is, in brief, the co-founder and editorial director of the Mashup Americans, and also is one of our board of governors here at the Podcast Academy. She's worked for 20 years as a journalist and editor in New York, and her work has appeared in Bloomberg Business Week, Women's Wear Daily, TED, Elle, Teen Vogue, among other publications. And Amy specializes in getting people to tell stories they never expected to share. So Amy, to that point, we have an amazing talk today, and that is specifically about refining your voice and vision as a podcaster, refining your point of view. So let me pass the mic over to you. Thank you so much.
Sorry, Amanda, thank you for that introduction. I didn't mean to I just started babbling. But hello. Well, so I guess, you heard a little bit my professional bio, and then my kind of personal take on my personal where I stand in the world as a mom, as a woman, as a business owner, as an immigrant kid. And all of that for us at the Mashup Americans is really important to say, because so much of how we established who we are and our point of view and our take on the work that we do is it's all about bringing your whole self into all of the aspects of your work and the kinds of stories you want to tell. So for us, it's essential to be able to incorporate all of that. And so that people that come into our stories and that us, as we work into them, that we both recognize in our audiences and in ourselves, kind of all the different elements of who we are, and we don't have to feel fragmented, which was what we were really trying to tackle when we started Mashup. So the Mashup Americans is really about, broadly telling stories about the intersection of race, culture, and identity. We sometimes say we're your guide to hyphen America. We're really, again, about elevating and centering stories that are ignored by mainstream media. I think, when we first started out in 2013, there was often like the big old vertical that nobody recognized was a vertical of stories, which was like a white, male, centric, objective gaze on the news, on storytelling, on perspective, on casting, all of that. And then there's a little vertical next to it that was like the Black vertical. And then an even littler vertical next to that was like Spanish languages. And then maybe way off into the corner, there was like a queer one and an Asian one. And then when we actually looked at our lives and the stories that we wanted to see and the things that were really appealing to us, they didn't live in those verticals. First of all, we didn't live in this square one that was considered to be the objective truth. We lived horizontally. And I think that is what we have always aimed to do in our storytelling, which is really bring as many specifics about who we are into our stories. And that actually, the more detailed you could get, the more universal the stories actually became. So, again, it's really for us has been about thinking about how we integrate our whole selves into our work and how we help other people do that as well. And once we developed that perspective, which was critical for us, because I think, my business partner and co-founder, Rebecca Lair, came up in more in digital strategy. She was the first director of business development at WNYC, and she had been really grounded in arts work, kind of audience development and strategy in the radio world. And I came from it from a more traditional magazine journalism perspective, that both of us were kind of there's got to be better ways. I had been either laid off from, or every magazine that I had been had dramatically restructured or has disappeared, as so many media outlets do. And we were there's got to be better ways. There's got to be better ways. So we built our business on what we knew we could sustain and what could sustain us. And that really meant being able to incorporate all of ourselves into it. And that included how we work. We're both moms. We both have young kids. We work with a lot of moms and a lot of parents. We work with a lot of young people who we nurture to help bring up and develop this perspective on the world. And all of that has been kind of critical, again, in refining our point of view and the stories we want to tell. So I think one way to think about kind of how as podcasters we do that. Once you have like your clear vision on how you want to do things, you can apply it to everything that you do, which for us again has been really important in like making sure that we're consistent and that we are able to walk the walk. And I think that's something that like the minute that you say you're a woman or a people of color owned company, people are like, oh, you must be a DEI expert. And we're like, no, no, no. There's other people who are experts in that. What we do is tell stories. But the way that we tell stories is informed by how we want to live and walk in the world. So for example, like what makes a mashup project? Well, first of all, it has to be something that interests and engages myself and Rebecca, and something that we can make meaningful for our team. And we have found that for us, because we're really committed to our mission, that is often enough to guide us into the right sorts of work. That's one thing that makes a mashup project. Another thing that makes a mashup project is it going to be meaningful for our community? Like, will it elevate our community? Will it push forward a cause that we're interested in? Another is, can we help grow and develop talent, mashup talent? So our teams are women, queer folks, people of color, immigrants, it's us, right? So what we want to do is make sure that the talent, both in front of the mic and behind the mic, and ourselves are always being elevated and kind of pushed to the next level of their work. And also, we're a for-profit company. Part of our mission is also to get people paid and to get ourselves paid. So we work really hard on also making sure that we are able to we fight to price ourselves fairly when we're working with clients, and we also make sure that all of our people get paid well. Because we have found that I think something that often happens is with whether it is like developing talent or fellowships or grants for people of color or for women, that often means like, oh, you're getting such great experience, you don't need to be paid well. Well, yeah, we also all still need to like pay bills. And who's to say that a young talent or somebody whose voice has been marginalized shouldn't be paid premium? So that's also part of what we do. And our projects, kind of work we take on, whether it is original work or client work in our studio, falls into like 2 or 3 of those buckets. And that's how we know it's a mashup project, and also how it feels to us. And I think that's something that we have found, like I do a lot of mentoring, or people ask for advice when they're starting out. And it's very easy to want to do, or to feel pressured to do what like is successful for other people, right? Like somebody's doing a comedy show, or somebody is doing this, or X person always has this. And so whether it's you feeling the pressure, or maybe you're working with a partner or a producer or a distributor that's like, well, this is very successful for them. If it doesn't resonate with you, it's just not going to work. Like there's so many ways that you can go around that. But for us, really leaning into who we are and being confident in that has been the thing that has given us the greatest success. And that's also, as we have continued to refine like why something is mashup, it's let us do all kinds of different things, because then that lens can be applied to all different kinds of projects and people. So for example, we have our original podcast, which Rebecca and I co-host, which came out in 2015 after we'd started our business. We started a business in 2013. And in 2015, we launched our podcast with KPCC and American Public Media in Los Angeles. And then we were with APM for a few years, and then we took our show independent. And for us, that has always been about highlighting mashup talent, diving into mashup issues, and really leaning into our belief that like culture is made and created on the margins, and that we can spot talent, because often what is popular, now was something that I don't even want to say the word, but like quote subcultures was big 4 years ago, right? Or 5 years ago. So that's one way that like, it's kind of the most obvious way that our point of view is expressed in podcasting. The next is, then we can, for our clients and our partners, bring them both the behind the scenes, like the production talent that we have been working with, and also their point of view on how they tell stories to organizations that maybe don't have that capacity in-house. So one of our big early partners was Hello Sunshine, Reese Witherspoon's company, where it was all women focused stories, and that like women were able to present themselves, and like the range of women that you see in the casting is Black, brown, Asian, queer, trans, immigrant, undocumented. And for us, we were able to help bring that to and forefront that for Reese Witherspoon and her early initial podcast. So that's like in entertainment. We also worked in the past couple of years, particularly leading up to like 2020, which by the way, feels like a million years ago. I don't even know when was 2020. But leading up to the election, we worked with a lot of progressive organizers, which was very much like cause and activism oriented work in podcasting, but, you know, producing a podcast for iGen Poo and for Alicia Garza and George Gale that was really about, you know, how do we bring communities together and help people understand that we are at the core, have more common interests and more human stories that connect us than separate us. And right now, you know, and then things that also can seem not obvious, but that is a more, I guess, like meta way of approaching what we see our challenges in media is, for example, one of our major clients right now is Peloton. And you would think like, well, what does Peloton have to do with being a mashup American? You know, if you were to look at the first season of the show, you know, it was about health and wellness and about fitness. It was hosted by a Black immigrant woman, Tunde Oyeneyin, one of their instructors who we worked with. And then, you know, we help cast all of the experts that come in and talk about health and fitness and psychology and sociology. And if you look at them, every single one of the experts is a woman that is brought in. The vast majority of the experts are women of color or are immigrants. Or are people not from the US. And I think that that is, again, how we say, we elevate, we are the experts in our work. And these are the experts that you should be listening to on this major, major platform. And that is backed by a huge, you know, like $1 billion company. When we know every year, like, the studies come out and it's always the same. Like if you look at the New York Times or the Washington Post or all of the major newsrooms, who are the people that are quoted and listed and experts in all of their stories? 80-90% of the time, it's always white men, right? And so this is part of how like we as a small company and as a small independent producer can shift the narrative on who is considered to be an expert, who are the people that should be quoted and whose points of view should be heard. And we're not saying we're like, you know, picking people off the street. These are PhDs at Stanford and at Duke and at Yale that are talking. They just also happen to be women of color that are the ones that are being elevated into this position. That all leads us, this is a very long-winded way of talking about all of our work, but I wanted to share with you like kind of the variety and the different ways that this lens, once you really hone a lens, can be applied to lots of different kinds of work. And the most exciting thing that we have going on today is that I'm in LA in my business partner's garage office because we just launched our first fiction project, which is a rom-com. It is out now on Apple subscriptions, Apple Premium, which is also a new experiment for us. It's all there now. It'll also be available on all the other platforms next week on July 19th. It's called Love and Noraebang, and it is a fiction rom-com that blends telenovela, K-dramas, and it's all set in a really multicultural mashup city, Los Angeles. And it has been so fun. And for us, again, this is the world that we want to create. This is the world that we want to inhabit. And it's joyful. And, you know, first of all, it's pure joy. It's narrated by Randall Park, who plays the city of LA. The romantic leads are Francia Reza and Justin Min, who are just delightful, and they fall in love through the course of the show, of course. But I think, you know, what has been really important for us is if you, again, think about it, like pull out a little bit into a macro level, it's, we're redefining like who gets to be in love. You know, usually you see kind of mixed race couples in a love story and the drama or the tension is always like, well, can they make it work? Can like an immigrant and an American like make it happen? Or is it possible that these cultures can never be overcome? Well, like obviously yes, because this is a life we lead. It's just not what's shown in the world. And so this was like a really joyful way for us to create. And again, after years of doing a lot of pretty tough kind of organizing and activism work, that we were able to inhabit and live in a world that was like so happy. And for us felt really important. That felt incredibly important to who we are and what we were doing and how we were able to sustain this. So that is a lot about me and about Mashup and how we have kind of developed our point of view. I'd be happy to take any questions if you have them, or, you know, let you guys chat amongst yourselves.
This is so awesome, Amy. I was taking tons of notes, and I don't know if you saw the chat, but I mean, I was just really processing a lot of the stuff. If I could share some reflection points and bounce them off of some of the folks, I'll stop recording. Don't worry, as soon as we get into the more nitty gritty of that fun networking parts. But I really loved, just to reiterate how much intentional structural build out of the voice and vision. So your through line in the Mashup Americans is literally demonstrating that a diversity of voices and stories that have never been told before because of the things you touched on in your talk. You also bake that into how you've staffed, how you supervise, and how you promote and help grow the careers of your team. That's really just reinforcing the narrative, and through that, you're also automatically building out your stories because people have those perspectives. So I think that was one of the biggest takeaways for me. I know that a lot of people will say it's really hard. I mean, you just talked about how you don't go out into the streets, but you know, for these various structural reasons, it isn't easy to find voices that are underrepresented. So what are some tips or tricks to really like seek out unique voices or really signal, you know, how you get those folks involved? Any really quick tips? It's not an easy problem to solve, so I am putting you on the spot.
Well, I think part of it is that not everything is for everyone, right? So I wouldn't say to a not first generation Korean American that they should spend their professional life trying to elevate and specifically work and look for Korean American stories to tell, right? That said, everybody has something. And what you can do is, I think you're almost always welcome to be a fly on the wall. And that's something that, you know, there are spaces that are for you and not for you. And also wherever you find yourself welcome, to open yourself up. I think one thing that is like a really easy metaphor for a lot of folks to visualize, right, is that like anytime you're in a room, any Zoom room, any meeting, any party, look around. Just like it's an automatic thing that people of color do, is just, or like that women do when they're often in male dominated groups. Like you just look around and you just take a little head count. You're like, oh, wow, there's like one queer person here, maybe that you know. There's like one Black person. There's one Asian, or you realize you're the only woman sitting in that room. And just think a little bit about how you got invited to that table, to that party, to that Zoom room, and what you can do to expand who else gets invited. And I think that that is a really kind of, it sounds, I don't mean it to sound like this, like patronizing to say like a beginner friendly way, but it's actually like an incredibly profound way to recognize like how much power you have because something happened to get you into that room and that other people are not in there with you, right? So as much as you can do to kind of build out that table and think about like who made the decision to get everybody there, who made the party list, who made the invite list, who casted that show, and how do you expand that? I think is just like asking that preliminary question is the best first way, because there's some way that like you were able to be there and that other people weren't. And then after that, you can start thinking like, okay, so now that I'm here, how do I build my network? Where do I have influence where I can grow the, like, you know, what's the saying? Like build a bigger table. Like we can all do that. because in one capacity or another, we're sitting at the table and somebody else isn't.
Oh, I love that. I do not want to take up any more space. We will jump into the networking stuff, but Tamara, please go for your question. I love it.
Hi, I just want to say this is awesome. And thank you so much, Amy and Amanda, for putting this together. I'm feeling so inspired. I was wondering, Amy, if you could talk a little bit about the structure of your company, kind of how you built out. I'm pretty much a one-person show, and I'm trying to think of the future when I won't be a one-person show. And if you have any thoughts about that, that would be awesome.
Oh, 100%. Well, first of all, it's hard and it's hard and it takes time. So we started in 2013. Rebecca and I, for a long time, it was just the two of us. Both of us were working like kind of probably 60-40. Like I was still freelancing and doing a lot of writing and editing. She was like running a foundation 3 days a week. And then in kind of all of our other time, we were working on building Mashup. We did this for years, and each of us, we did everything on a shoestring. I think each of us put in like at that time, like, I don't know, maybe it was $8,000 a piece in the year, and called in a lot of favors. And with that, like collectively $16,000, we like hosted our website. We did all of this. We paid the occasional legal fees that we needed to do. And we just kind of built project by project. We did that for, I think, 2 years. And then we did another year where we had enough personal savings to not work at our other jobs. And we were like, okay, we're going to see if we can make this into like a real business where we're not, stretched in 4 different places. We really felt like the idea at that point that we had been working on for 2.5, 3 years was refined enough that we could like really give it a go. And if we couldn't make it work, then it wasn't going to be a viable business. So we did that for a year. It was a really tough, tight year. And like quite literally, we signed a deal in like December with Hello Sunshine, with Reese Witherspoon's company. And after that, we just like, it wasn't, we've never had outside funding. It has always been funded by us and by revenue, but we just slowly kept on building. And then I think that was our first major client. I think within like 6 or 8 months, we were able to pay ourselves. So I guess it took maybe 18 months for us to actually like build up again, like, and we're pretty in that way traditional. We like run a profitable business. We take our salary from the business. Like we're pretty tight on how we do that. And then bit by bit, when it came from us being sorry about that. That was a reminder to take my medicine. A 2-woman shop to, for the most part, we always hired per project. So kind of slowly bringing producers, we'd have a team that worked like really intensely with us for like 3 months or 6 months, and then let them go. Over the years, you develop relationships where we have now a lot of people that work for us 70% of their time all year round. We only have one employee, and she was the most critical hire that we made. And she is like our savior, Shelby, who's kind of like a project manager, EP, shares half of our brain, does everything to like clear our minds so that like she does everything from doing partner relations to making sure that like we get the goodies for the gift bags that we're going to give away at our launch party tonight. And like, that's when we talk about all hands on deck, like we're the founders and the creators, and we also would have been doing that ourselves, but she helped us do it. So I think, and that only happened 2 years ago, I want to say, like, and she had been working for us. Again, it just kind of grew bit by bit. Like we hired her for 10 hours a week, then it was 20 hours a week. And now she works for us like 35 hours a week or 40 hours a week. And so I think my greatest advice there would just do what you can afford. And it's always going to be helpful. Like think what is the biggest pain point for you? And for us, the biggest pain point was doing all the administrative stuff, which really prevented us from like you know, when you spend 2 hours trying to like haggle and schedule and book a meeting, it's very difficult to then focus on like the 20 minutes where you really need to get shit done in that meeting and focus. So for us, that was a huge lift to us. And now we absolutely could not run our business without her.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, everybody needs a Shelby.
Yes.
I need a Shelby. Let's
Yes.
all get a Shelby in our lives here. Amy, thank you so much. Again, you really did a beautiful job of speaking about how to refine your point of view and your voice and vision as a podcaster. And that starts from the ground up. It starts with being intentional, knowing exactly what you're setting out to do. And you shared a lot of really great points. I'm going to stop recording and we're going to go ahead and jump into breakout rooms. And Amy, I'm going to give you the option to circulate or not. But thank you again so much for this amazing talk.
Thank you.
Do this here.